Welcome back, everyone, to OpenLine. Glad you are with us. Talking about a very important issue, talking about safety on construction sites. Certainly, construction is booming in Nashville. It has straight through the pandemic. But what is the situation for workers on those sites? Not just during COVID, but before COVID. And that's what we're talking about. There's a bill in the Metro Council that would seek to make some changes and address some of these issues. We just learned the state, though, may try and stop any sort of reform here in Nashville. Let's go to the phones now. We have a couple callers here. Let's go to Lucy. Hello, Lucy.
Hey, y'all.
Hi, what's on your mind?
Well, Mr. Hall, take a deep breath and just relax with me here a minute. I appreciate you doing this topic. This is probably going to be the last chance ever I get to make a comment about labor and working for free for people here in this state. We have a history of this. And, you know, this is going to sound unrelated, but I want you to, the two council people there, to take a look at what's going on in Columbia, Tennessee, in Spring Hill, down in that area. They've already came in, a company from California, and bought up all of the entry-level housing and turned it into rentals. And we've been hearing from our state legislature that just wait, they're bringing jobs, good jobs, back from overseas from communist China to this country, to this state. Of course they are. They're owned by the communists. Now here's the deal. There are two things that the communists don't like. They don't like lefties, they don't like liberals, and they don't like unions. I have worked in union shops and not joined the union and not been penalized or mistreated by it because it's a state law. That's why you need to take a look at why they're going to amend this Constitution of the state to put that in. The reason that they had to do that is because every time a union tried to come into this state and stay on legit and on the upside, they infiltrated it. I have what I consider a relative from the 30s and 40s that he set up shop here, pretending to be a labor union, and what he did is he went out, got people to join the union, made them strike, started a riot, got them arrested, and they came back as jail labor and prison labor to work at those same jobs for free. So that's a history in this state. So when you say OSHA, you've got federal OSHA, you've got state OSHA. I've worked in a state where we were federal property, but only the state OSHA was allowed to come in first on a federally owned reserve. So a lot of crooked stuff went on. So we have got a problem here with labor, and of course they're going to kick back on you guys, and they're going to call you liberals, they're going to call you lefties, because that scores them points with the communist Chinese that are bringing jobs back that are communist owned. They don't like unions. So that's part of the problem, and they don't care about safety. They don't care about proper construction. Now, Mr. Hall, your group there, the investigative department here a few years ago, did a story on that convention center. We had tons of blue-collar workers here, and the way they hired for that convention center out of Texas and out of Michigan, cheap slave labor that were here temporarily, these people lost their houses here in Nashville and had to move out of Nashville. People sold their houses in Seattle, blue-collar workers, moved here, bought a house to go to work on that convention center, and lost it all. And that who had interfered with that? Look real close. It's the state. So Texas and Michigan both bragged about their unemployment rate. I'm like, of course your blue-collar rate is low because they're all working here in Nashville. So y'all need to go back and look at about what you're up against and whose butt the state legislature is kissing. Thank you for listening.
So Lucy has a lot to say there. Lucy had a lot to say. Lucy, thank you for calling in. Thank you for all of that. I don't know where to begin with that. I'm very interested in the convention center. She says she's not surprised the state wants to kind of Bigfoot what you're doing. I'll take what you want to there. Ethan, you start.
One thing that I did hear that I think is a really important dimension is the discussion of people being made to work for less than the market rate, particularly if you've got a criminal history, particularly if you feel any kind of insecurity in your document status, or if you feel any insecurity, with your employer. A lot of people here have been kept in temp agencies, working for temp agencies that function kind of like what she was describing, almost a referral service that would look to some people like kind of what a labor union does, where it sends out good people to good jobs. But instead, it's kind of a corruption of that model, where it sends folks to dead-end, low-paying jobs that frequently don't have the training or even the safety equipment. Sometimes these same temp workers are made to pay for their safety equipment, rent it for the day, or they are required to take rides in company vans, even if they have their own transportation, and pay for that ride. And so those are forms of wage theft that people use here in Nashville frequently by some big name national companies that use that model all over the country to take vulnerable people and steal their wages a little bit every day.
And before I go to the Councilwoman, as far as labor, so she's also saying, there's this history with animosity toward labor unions and labor. I don't know, there have been ebbs and flows, and where does labor stand right now? Do you feel like it's gaining, or is it not, or kind of what are you seeing right now? And I'll go with you for that, Ethan.
Well, what we do see is we see kind of a rising tide for labor in Nashville and in Tennessee because we have solutions to the problems that are facing more and more people as inequality and insecurity has become more and more the norm for workers, especially here in Tennessee. Tennessee, I believe, still boasts that we are the #1 state for minimum wage workers. And of course, our minimum wage is pegged to the federal very low $7.25. And so we brag about having that low wage. And that comes at a cost. It comes at a cost to all of us. And when you realize that there are some people in the society here in Tennessee that don't even, after the wage theft that happens to them, might not even make that $7.25 when it's all said and done. It really is an eye-opener. And we've allowed all of these structures like temp agencies and cash advance systems. We've put all of these products and services around poverty, and that's what traps people. And so we've seen a lot more interest in labor unions, specifically our building trades unions, in the last several years, particularly the last 10 years, as people know and find out that the training and apprenticeships that we provide are the single best pathway out of poverty for someone who is stuck in that cycle and has an interest in building trades.
And what I saw during COVID is people were very scared about going into work, working on these construction sites, very scared about getting the virus, but they were of course very scared to talk to a TV person. I mean, it's very difficult, but they were able to go through labor, and labor was able to speak out on their behalf. And I don't know if that helps turn the tide or not. But Councilwoman, what do you think about what Lucy had to say? She's talking about the convention center there, just kind of, all of what she had to say. I want to let you comment as well.
Yeah, Lucy did have a lot to say, and I agree with Ethan. Lucy was highlighting how a lot of people are taken advantage of. A lot of people don't know where to go. They don't know what their rights are. The state doesn't offer much rights to its workers as it is, but the few we do have, they don't know what they are allowed to fight against and push back against. And then you brought up the fact of COVID. We had outbreaks in this county at several construction sites, and that's because they didn't have the the proper sanitary facilities, right? We didn't have enough hand washing stations. We didn't have enough mask for the workers. A lot of the workers had to go out there and get their own. A lot of the unions and the worker advocates brought them, those protective equipment that they needed. And so we've seen them step in when the state hasn't provided them with the basic proper protection. We saw a lot of people getting COVID because a lot of construction workers share rides to the work sites, and so if they're not wearing masks within the vehicle, they also had that issue. So we had a lot that we were faced up against, and that's why we saw so many outbreaks in the minority community as well. It was tough for a while there. Southeast had the highest numbers. We have a huge number of working class people that live in this area. And Ethan, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think part of the convention center was built by labor contractors. And we do have Vonda McDaniel, who's the president of the CLC, who currently serves on the board that oversees the convention center. So we are making strides and working on things we've already built on.
Okay. All right, let's take another call here. Let's go to Ken. Hello, Ken.
Hello.
Go right ahead.
Hi. I was watching the program here, and what Lucy was saying really struck me, because you're talking with a person who's been to Salt Lake City, Chicago, over to Atlanta, and I've been around the country working, and I've seen conditions, and this is over a period of 27 years, going out and observing in my field of work. And I've noticed several things that really struck me with what she was saying. What she was saying really was that people are coming in, they come into a state temporarily, they do the work on the construction site or whatever is going on. It's a time lapse thing. And then 6, 8 months, 2 years, they're gone. And they've invested their own selves into that state and want to stay and make it a better life for themselves there. But when it's done, they're out. And the unions that are trying to propagate everywhere, and some people say their unions are no good anymore, or that type of situation. Unions are still viable here in the country, but where I've seen this really, really bad is in the Southeast area, and it's always been a real problem with getting unions. For instance, let's say San Francisco, California, Walgreens, which everybody knows, national company, they've been unionized since the 60s in California, but here in Tennessee, there isn't. And of course, just like when you're working at Kroger's or this, that, you know those people work really hard getting those shelves ready, getting the stock out.
Right. So what your question, or what are you saying here?
I just wanted to show my appreciation for what Lucy was saying. Because she hit it right on the head. This state here, especially Tennessee, something bad happens with the weather, that type of deal. They're coming from Florida, North Carolina, everywhere. They come right in. They come in to do construction for homes, things like that, for just regular folk like you and me, and they rip people off, and then they're on their way. And that's because there's no really good level of countermanding those type of actions.
All right, that's what do you think of what he's saying? That there are these things where people come in and swoop in and do work and then have to leave, I guess. Ethan, what do you think?
You know, particularly he particularly mentioned the situation that happens when there's a natural disaster, and that is something that I've personally tracked. I've talked to some reporters here about. We do see contractors, fly-by-night contractors come in and a lot of times bring folks who are chasing what they think are good paying jobs. They're advertised a lot of times as there's FEMA money, there's going to be great work to clean up after the tornadoes, for instance, and folks will who do chase good paying jobs will show up, only to find out that what was being advertised was not what it turns out to be, and that they're actually going to be charged for a hotel room that they were promised, or that they are going to have to, pay some kind of finder's fee to a labor broker. And so that's what I see happening. I see a lot of very hardworking people who do come from other parts of the country and world to build our state and build our city, and that's something that we can celebrate, because there are amazing hardworking people from around the world who are part of building this city, and there's a place for them in labor unions and a place for them on any job site with high road contractors. The problem is that a lot of times they aren't given the rights that they need to exercise to make sure that they feel the security that they're getting the full benefit of. And we know that if that was happening, a lot more often people would choose to buy a home and settle down and be part of a community. And that's what, people are the same wherever you go.
Right, right. Okay, we're going to take a break. We'll come back. We'll continue this conversation. If you want to call in, there's the number 615-737-PLUS. Take a break. Be back right after this.